Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-Leagues, Premier League and more. This week, a clear leader is established in the Prem as Liverpool and City both drop points. Nuno and Ole duke it out in the El Sackico. And Paddy Vieira throws stones despite being employed by a big glass house. Now, no Colby this week on the pod. He got married yesterday. So, Colby and his wife got married on the banks of the Brisbane River with some beautiful views of the Story Bridge. And although the three of us couldn't make it there because of COVID restrictions, I know the three of us and everyone from the More Than a Game community just want to wish Colby and his beautiful bride a big congratulations on their big day yesterday. So, look, we try to be more than a game here, and I guess today we were. All right. On the pod this week, we've got Damo, who's podding by candlelight due to the lack of power situation in southeast Melbourne. How are you today, mate?
I'm good. Still got a bit of natural light coming through the window. We'll see how long that lasts.
I probably could have introduced that as like some mood lighting or something like that. I missed the opportunity there, right?
I'm usually on the pod with my influencer lighting right on my face. So
the ring light, yeah.
Stark difference tonight.
Very good. And joining us and completing the panel is Jesse. How are you today, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, we're all a little bit dusty, and I'm just I'm grateful. Damo, that we've got some people from an international audience. It's great to see some people from Phillip Island on the pod today. So welcome.
I didn't think you'd go overseas yet.
Yeah, that's right. But no, I'm feeling good, and I just wanted to echo what you were saying before with Colby and his marriage. So that was you've gone it early on my moment of the week, Tommie. So I'll have to come up with a new one.
Mate, I reckon you've got about 60 seconds for Damo to finish his for you to think of another one. All right, Damo, all right, I'll let you go first then. What was your moment of the week?
My moment of the week had to be, as someone who's not a fan of Manchester United, the fallout of the defeat against Liverpool and everything that happened in the week following. From the game itself, the heaviest loss at their own ground ever to a massive rival, to Sir Alex Ferguson turning up at the training ground a couple of days later, apparently working out who's going to be the next manager, for the club to then report he was actually only there getting a suit fitted. It's been an absolute mess. And then they publicly came out and backed Ole on like Thursday, 48 hours before their next game. It's just been an absolute mess. But as someone who doesn't really like Manchester United, it's been great to watch. It's great entertainment.
Does that mean you're very much Ole in?
Yeah, big time. Ole in. Always.
Yeah, like you say, just so many weird aspects to it. I mean, so many people seem to have their opinions on it, and I don't mean just sort of pundits and the football community. I mean people within the club and around the club. Just bizarre. And I mean, of course, when I go for a suit fitting, the first place I go to is a football club. So, yeah. Jesse, what about you, mate? Have you had time to come up with one, or should I go next?
Yeah. I mean, it was actually, having watched the game, the Leicester Arsenal game together last night, I think you have to have a shout out for Ramsdale's save. Damo and I, after a day of quite a few Proseccos and etc., were very critical of the save and sort of thought, it's a good save, not a great save. But I think that was probably the alcohol talking, because upon reflection, I think what we thought was that he'd kind of crept to the corner of the net and then had to make a big effort to make up for his lost space. But having watched it again, he actually was pretty well positioned. That it was a really good save. So I guess it's a learning for everybody. Don't be too critical after a few beers.
Put some respect on Ramsdale's name. He's got to be at least in the top 5 keepers in the league, isn't that right, Damo?
No, I'll let you talk about that. I did say to a couple of people today in a group chat that, Ramsdale, he's a good mid-table Premier League goalkeeper, so I guess he's found his place at Arsenal.
Oh,
jeez.
Oh, look, there was plenty of big news items this week, and plenty of candidates for moment of the week. But look, I really couldn't go past my own West Ham's win over Manchester City in the Manchester City Cup aka the Carabao Cup, aka the League Cup. It was the first time Manchester City have lost an overall tie in 23 matches, although they did lose to Manchester United in the second leg of a semi in recent years. So pretty big result for West Ham. Both teams did put out sort of not quite second string sides, but sort of like somewhere between a first and a second string side. But look, teams like Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United, it doesn't matter if you're playing the second string side. Like they would finish mid-table in the Premier League anyway. So look, pretty massive result for my boys this week. What about you guys? Own goal, Jesse?
It was hard to find one. I mean, it was a bit of a mess yesterday. I guess you could say Spurs, Leicester. I mean, there's a few other performances. I mean, it's hard to go past the rugby tackle of Laporte, who obviously, in a parallel universe was playing for the All Blacks against Wales and Cardiff, and decided to just, pull his man down when actually, if you look at it, they had a bit of cover there. It would have been a sprint for one of the fullbacks to get there, but they weren't completely stuffed there. So for him to actually tackle him was to sort of make up for his bad position in the first place. Was just like he gave the referee a decision to make, whereas he didn't need to. Like he could have, like I don't know, like it was a really panicky foul, and I think a lot of people were surprised when the red came out, but it can't be overturned if he does it right. I mean, unless VAR think he actually really screwed up. I mean, the decision's gonna stand. So it's a serious situation if the referee goes straight to red, which is what he did in that case. Yeah.
It was a strange red card, I guess, because it felt really soft because he's still 35 yards, I think, from goal. So that who was it? It was Zaha. Zaha still had a lot to do, and I don't know how far away. I can't remember how far away the likes of sort of say Kyle Walker was, but I mean Kyle Walker's one of the quickest players in the league, right? Like he's someone that can get across and cover. So, but having said that though, Manchester City do get the rub of the green with yellow cards and Fernandinho and the like, and it feels like the universe sort of smiled the other way for once, rather than just sort of giving Manchester City sort of the rub of the green, and it felt like the universe finally giving one the other way. Damo, what about you, mate? You got an own goal this week?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned West Ham was your moment of the week. My own goal comes from West Ham itself.
There we go.
I'm sure you saw this, Tommie. One of the owners, one of the Dildo brothers, David Gold, I think his name is.
Yep.
Sent out a tweet yesterday congratulating Issa Diop on his 100th game for the club, but posted a picture of Xander Silva, I think his name is. So that is a massive own goal.
Both players just happen to be black, so I mean, it does seem as though it's easy for them to get confused for him. I actually think he's done something like this before, where I think he posted, it might have been a tweet about Ogbonna, and he posted another photo of a black player. And at this point, it's really hard to tell which of the official Twitter pages and which are the parody ones, because I mean, the fact that he's done, I mean. Look, he is. I'm pretty sure he's in his 70s. He's late 70s. So look, he's getting on. I mean, people make mistakes, but I mean, come on.
Well, he's made a living of designing things to fuck people. So why not, do the same with words?
Yeah, well, his reputation's fucked as well, isn't it? So.
Oh God.
Oh wow.
If any man could fuck himself, it's that man.
On that note.
Yeah. All right. So for me, my own goal this week was to do with something that people might remember from back in the northern summer. Christian Eriksen obviously had that massive cardiac arrest on the field playing for Denmark at the Euros. Big moment in football that sort of brought the world together, and as a reminder that football is really important, but sometimes there are things that are just more than a game as part of football. But Eriksen sort of he's continuing his rehab at the moment with a view to returning to play for Inter. But it looks as though as part of his recovery, he was fitted with basically a device which sort of if he does experience cardiac arrest again, it sort of basically defibrillates his heart to start again. Now, the Italian Football Federation, they don't allow professional players to play with these heart devices. So it's looking like Eriksen either won't be able to play again if he wants to stay in Italy, or that he'll have to go somewhere else. Now, there is, I guess, a chance that maybe he could go to the Netherlands. I read today that Daily Blind has one of the same devices fitted from a few years ago, and he's been able to continue playing for Ajax and in the Champions League, no less. So there is some precedent there that Eriksen could continue on and have a great career for the next few years. But I guess a little bit sad that, and I think it is for a very valid reason that they don't allow players with those heart devices fitted. But I guess a little bit sad that he may not be able to play probably the level that maybe he could in the future. So that's my own goal.
So football entities, let's just run players into the ground. Also, football entities, let's not give them anything to support their hearts.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of. I mean, no one's going to not get that device fitted if they've had cardiac arrest, right? But at the same time, I don't think anyone's going to sort of force that decision on themselves or have that decision forced upon them. It just means they're going to have to go elsewhere. And it looks like Inter, they're happy to say, okay, well, if you can't play for us, we're happy to sort of release you from your contract. So interesting times, I guess, ahead. And I mean, if there's one former Premier League club of his that could probably do with a player like Eriksen, maybe the Eriksen from a few years ago, but that's Spurs, and never know, maybe we could see Eriksen pop up in the Premier League shortly. So
yeah, well, Spurs are lacking a bit of heart at the moment, so he'd fit right in.
Oh, jeez. Mate, I'm going to start calling you David Gold because that was fucked. All right, look, a few listener news items this week to talk about. First one was a big one, which big piece of news. We'll call it football related news because that's really what it was. And it was Josh Cavallo coming out as an openly gay footballer this week. Made massive news in Australia, all over the commercial news channels, but also all around the world as well. So pretty massive for Josh. The football community really showed its best side as there was a unanimous support ringing out for the young man from all over Australia and all around the world, with some of the world's most famous clubs and players showing their support. We're just really chuffed for Josh that he was able to, that he felt the time and the situation was right for him to make the announcement. Clearly, it was a massive deal for him. And I guess it's fantastic that he's just able to be sort of honest with himself and the world about who he is, and I guess it very much easily could have been sort of a moment of the week, but I don't know, it felt bigger than a moment of the week, to be honest. So really great to see.
I think a lot of credit has to go, and I've spoken before about how I think Carl Veert's a shit bloke. Clearly, he's not a shit bloke. In massive credit to Adelaide United, the club, and the group of players that are at the club that made it a safe enough environment for him to be ready to do that. So that's also a note to make, is that, obviously things at Adelaide United are in a really great space if you've got a player that's willing to be that comfortable.
Well, and I mean, he's only been there for, I think, a year as well, having come from Melbourne City. So, it's like you say, it speaks to not just Adelaide United, but I think the A leagues as well. They obviously were involved in this as well, and sort of like preparing the ground so that he could make the announcement, because obviously the media were aware as well. So good play all round from everyone. Next up is something that we've kind of already discussed a little bit. We'll go into a little bit more detail about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer not getting sacked by Manchester United. It felt like this was a done deal, that he was going to get sacked. It was just a case of when. Conte seemed like the manager who was most strongly linked with the soon-to-be vacated seat, but it just never happened, even though it felt like it was just inevitable. Really bizarre, I thought. And I'm not sure if either of you have got anything else that you want to add as well.
It's Q4 of the Super Bowl, and you need someone to throw that Hail Mary, and you give it to Ole because he'll never get sacked. He'd make the perfect quarterback.
Very good. Very good. I was wondering where you were going with that. I'm like, man, this is niche. But I don't think we've talked NFL on the pod before.
I wasn't sure myself, to be honest. But I have to say, it's it is just unfolding the way it always does with Ole, where he's the furnace has been applied, and somehow he still pulls a performance out of his ass, and now you've got the same newspapers which are saying he's gone 2 days ago. Now, like, has he saved his job? And it's a circus. It's an absolute circus.
I think the thing for me is it's almost like on Thursday, before the club had publicly came out and backed Solskjaer, that said he's going to be the manager carrying forward. It's almost like the newspapers were reporting that Conte or Pochettino, whoever else, had already signed a contract. You know, just the way people were talking about it was like, oh, it's a done deal. He's gone. So, yeah, it was my moment of the week for a reason. It's just been so fun to watch it unfold, and just United fans on social media particularly just melt down.
But, I mean, also there was plenty of insights into sort of how the club is being run, and also sort of how the broader, I guess, elite level of football views the club as well. I mean, the fact that it was pretty publicly known that Conte seemed to have some pretty strong reservations about actually joining the club, that he was unsure about sort of the structure of the club, unsure about joining, how much influence he would have over transfers, and he sees that there is a couple of gaping holes, particularly at sort of defensive midfielder. And I mean, also, you probably argue that he would likely come in and say that they need a right-sided wing back as well, assuming he wants to play 3 at the back. So the fact that he wasn't fully committed to the idea, that may have influenced the idea of keeping Ole on for a little bit longer as well. So
Ashley Young back to United, January 2022.
Is he still at Inter, or where is he now?
Is it Villa?
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
very good.
Mid-season transfer.
Yeah,
you've got a ready-made wing back in Marcus Rashford, real Victor Moses style.
Real Jose Mourinho territory as well, right? I think we didn't quite turn him into a wing back, but he damn tried his hardest.
Jadon Sancho would be great wing back.
Yeah, well, he can't score any goals, so you may as well put him there.
Yeah, even Stragan has popped up into the comments saying that speaking as a Man United fan, if Ole was to get replaced, I'd go for Erik ten Hag at Ajax, which is an interesting shout, because a friend of the pod, Johnny Stomo, he was telling me this week that Ten Hag has actually been linked with the Newcastle job, and so still, I guess, very interesting to see where he ends up at. Maybe somewhere in the Premier League, maybe he'll end up at Spurs, maybe. We would just have to wait and find out.
And I think on that note about him being linked with Newcastle, they were ready to offer him nearly quadruple his current salary at Ajax or something like that. So, I mean, as is going to come the nature with Newcastle, like it did with City at the start and Chelsea at the start, they're going to have to pay overs for everyone, but they just will because they've got the money.
It doesn't shock me, though, because, I mean, like, if you're the manager at Ajax, you're probably not on massive money anyway, even though, they're in the Champions League. Everyone views them as a big club. They don't have the financial muscle of any of those other bigger clubs in bigger leagues. Another manager who was actually sacked this week was Ronald Koeman. He's gone from the Barca job, which, I mean, I've got a feel for this guy, because he's been gunning for this Barca job for years. And he finally gets it, and it's basically at a period where the club is just in absolute and utter turmoil, with Messi leaving. The financial situation is completely fucked. You've got they sign Aguero and a couple of other free transfers, and they weren't able to register them. You can't think of a worse situation to be joining a club, really. And it was almost inevitable that I felt he was going to get sacked. It looks as though Xavi is going to replace him. Jesse?
I was just going to say, Tommie, the analogy I'd use is, you're working hard, you're saving money, you're skipping your avocados on toast, you're saving up for that first house. You're trying to get into the property market. You buy it, and then everything's rotten, and there's asbestos, and all of a sudden you realize you've bought a massive dud. And that's essentially what happened with Koeman at Barcelona. And it's just an absolute
oddly specific, Jesse.
Yeah. I had some pretty vivid dreams last night, Damo.
A red wine really got to your brain.
Yeah. No, but it is like one of those things where it's like, he as you say, Tommie, like it must be so emotionally like it must just screw you emotionally to be so invested in that club as well. So much history with it as a player as well, and then to get there and for it not to be what you expected it to be, and I just can't imagine how awkward and uncomfortable that would be, and not just with him, but also his relationship with the fan base and all the people that would obviously idolized him at other times. That's why sometimes I prefer players to not go back and manage their former clubs. It's just it can be, yeah.
Well, you can see what happened with sort of Lampard at Chelsea, right? It's sort of, you could make a case that it sort of tainted his legacy somewhat, but I know a lot of fans still love him. So.
It's almost like Xavi at Barcelona is going to be a nightmare in waiting, because the fans are so in love with him. He's one of their greatest players of all time. As soon as things don't go the right way at Barcelona, particularly, the fans are very, very quick to turn. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes him to turn on someone like Xavi, who's one of their favorite sons.
He was great at beating the press, and he's going to have to be great at beating the press again.
Well played. It's just got to be one of those jobs that you'd have to say no one would want it in world football right now, because it's just a complete not a basket case.
I mean, it's like the fans think that sacking Koeman is going to completely turn around the club immediately. There's a lot more to it than replacing your manager for Barcelona at the moment. So maybe the fans will kind of sit with that and understand that and have a bit more patience and time with Xavi. But I guess we'll have to wait and see, because Barcelona fans aren't patient at the best of times.
Nope. Especially when they're yet to really realise the full impact on the pitch of Messi no longer being there as well, I think. So
just a final thing, and this is something that I didn't have in my 2021 bingo card, as you'd say, Tommie, is there's some weird parallels between what's going on with Barca and Newcastle, because if the people are talking about for Newcastle to slowly build, they need to bring in these temporary players that are there for 1 or 2 years who kind of get them up to a certain level. And then when they're sort of ready to be sort of disposed, then you bring in the big guns. Well, Barca's kind of the same with the manager, because you've got to either convince somebody that you're going to be part of a 5 or 6 year project and you are the manager, you're the one, or you're going to say to somebody, hey, do you mind just, being hired as a temp contract for a couple of years? And once we're done with you, out the door you go. I mean, obviously, some managers would be happier for the pay, understandable, but it's kind of like a catch-22, and you can get stuck where you're not quite attractive enough for the average manager, but you're also not quite ready for the big dog. So I do think there's a weird sort of parallel between what's going on with Newcastle in the coming months and where Barca is at the moment, and I never thought in my lifetime I would compare the two.
I'm not sure if it's quite the same parallel, but I actually would more likely maybe compare it to Manchester United once Fergie left. Although Messi wasn't the manager there, it's a similar huge gaping hole that's been left at the club in terms of influence, and also like results are suffering as well. So I think it was a bit of a poison chalice, whoever was the manager after Fergie, because even still, Fergie's shadow just looms very, very large over Man United. And I think that's what we're likely to see at Barcelona, is that Messi's shadow is going to loom very large for a long time, and people are going to have very, very high expectations for a long time too. So, just another perspective on it, I guess. All right, back onto some Australian football now. The Isuzu Ute A-League fixture list was released late in the week. A couple of big takeaways, though, looks like we're going to be having two-legged semi-finals, though. Guys like that idea? Indifferent? Love it?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it adds more fixtures to the calendar for Australian football. And I think two-leg semi-finals just add... it gives both sets of fans the opportunity to have a semi-final at home, and it also it just adds a different element to it. We see it in some cups around the world. The Champions League obviously have two legs, and some of the narratives that can come from two-legged games are brilliant, and it's something that I think the A-League haven't done for a long time. I think they did it maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago, but towards the early years of the A-League, and I think it's a great reintroduction.
Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a biased perspective, I just went straight to the Phoenix fixtures. But on the two-legged thing,
so not the two-legged semi-finals.
Yeah. I was I wasn't even paying attention to the two-legged. Basically, that was news to me. But I
Didn't check the run sheet, obviously, either.
No, sorry. I did. I was aware that they'd made some changes, but I wasn't aware that it was two-legged semi-finals. But I am, like you guys, excited about that because I think that it actually will bring in kind of like what we often want, which is some of the European feel, and that kind of like drama that you get with the two-legged. So I'm all for that. Sorry, what I was also meaning though, on a different note, was just the fact that the Phoenix, obviously been based in Wollongong, was probably the top of my my list as far as checking out what's going on from my perspective, because I didn't know where they were going to go. I was obviously, most clubs knew exactly where they were going to start the season, but my club was kind of on the road until a few days ago.
Yeah, no, that is a good point, and I guess it's disappointing, but obviously understandable why the Phoenix is going to be based out of Wollongong again, and obviously the real winners out of that are Wollongong as well. That they'll have an A-League team based there for another 12 months,
and Chicos as well. They're the real winners.
Well, that means that the Phoenix are winners because they get to go to Chicos every week.
Exactly.
Look, the other thing I picked out from this was that I think there's a missed opportunity here in that the final round of fixtures aren't going to be played simultaneously. Obviously, we do see that in the Premier League, that the final round is all at I think it's a 1 o'clock kickoff or 3 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday afternoon. Obviously, I understand why the A-League have chosen not to do that, so they can get as many games onto TV as possible. But still, I guess a little bit disappointing that opportunity has been missed, because we talk about drama before when we're talking about the final series, when there's possibly a title on the line or an A-League playoff spot up for grabs. Obviously, huge opportunity for drama there. So, bit of a missed opportunity, I think, as far as that goes. All right, finally, before we get into the Prem, Matildas, they hosted Brazil again this week in the second of their 2-game series. Claire Polkingham again, and Sam Kerr got on the score sheet. Big talking point was probably Sam Kerr's goal, which got tongues wagging with the incisiveness of the counter-attack. A lot of people saying that was one of the best goals they've seen from the Matildas this year, or even in recent memory. So great stuff there. The 75% capacity crowd also bodes well for future Socceroos and Matildas games in the near future. And it's since been announced that the Socceroos are going to be playing Saudi Arabia on the 11th of November in just under 2 weeks at Combank Stadium in Parramatta. So very, very exciting stuff there.
Yeah, and I think you could see watching those Matildas games how much being back in Australia meant to the team, and it kind of really drove them on. And we've spoken about this Saudi Arabia game, and we will obviously speak about it when it comes around again. But it's such a huge fixture, and for it to be back in Australia in front of Australian fans is just a huge, huge bonus. So that was a huge piece of news for me.
Good stuff. All right, next up, the Premier League. So we're gonna start off today with the El Sackico. That was Spurs hosting Manchester United. This was a late kickoff on Saturday, so naturally we didn't watch it last night. But it involved Nuno and Ole facing off at Spurs' brand new stadium. Manchester United switched to a back three, as it appeared as though Ole was trying to do his best Conte impersonation to remove the need for him to be sacked and Conte to fill his place. Seemed to do the trick, though, as a motivated Manchester United pretty easily swatted aside a lackluster Spurs side struggling for form. Boys, a little bit of Manchester United chat first before we talk about Spurs. What do you think about the move to a back three? Do you think Ole might stick with that for the next few games, or you think this is just a special game plan for Spurs?
I think the move was mainly so they could have Ronaldo and Cavani start up front together. And I think that was really the only formation that made sense with the players they've got to get those two up front together. So I think if they're going to continue to try and play them together up front, which obviously yielded great results, they combined for a couple of goals, then yeah, I think they'll keep this formation as long as they want to keep playing those two in that way.
I think the big challenge with this is this formation, and why I even wonder if Conte might have been a little bit concerned about taking the job was that I mean, Manchester United just paid £80 million for Sancho. They've got Rashford, who could probably quite easily fit into, I guess, a pairing up front. But I mean, he's best played off of the left. And then you've got Greenwood as well, who, yeah, look, he probably actually has played his best football this season off of the when played up front, but by himself. So I think that is a concern that, like, if you're playing a 3 at the back, you're not really going to be playing Sancho as a wing back, are you? So I guess remains to be seen for me whether or not, even if Ole wants to play 3 at the back, if he really can kind of afford to do it, even if the results are going his way.
Yeah, I love 3 at the back. I mean, not just in Premier League, but just in various leagues. I love the shape. I think I think there's so many ways that you can manipulate who would normally be a wing back with a winger. And like a lot of people sort of fall into the trap of thinking that, oh no, you're just going to ruin a perfectly good winger and make them into like a really defensive wing back. And I know in some systems that does happen, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like on one side, you can have a more of a, who would normally be a left back,
One
playing left wing back
type.
Yeah, and then on the other one, you can have someone who's incredibly progressive and is far more of a winger than the other one, and you can invert them. And I don't know, like, I just think there's a lot of ways that you can actually mold it to whatever the manager wants, and then you can base it around the two that are in front of you. And guys, I mean, this is what we do, and every time there's a partnership brewing in any club, is what's the hybrid name going to be? I mean, I've got an early one. Is it Edison Ronaldo? I mean, you know, they always need something, don't they? You know, they always need something. You got to have like a hybrid name for them. So,
CCs, you just can't say no to Cavani and Cristiano up front.
CCs,
tasty,
like the chips.
Ole just licking his fingers covered with yellow cheese sauce.
I think worth noting about the 3 at the back, and when people often talk about, oh, a manager's playing 3 at the back, or a manager's playing 5 at the back, or whatever it is, when they change something around, just because that's what's on paper doesn't necessarily mean that's where the team stays the whole game, right? And I think if you were to watch this game back, Manchester United probably attacked in a 3-5-2, so they could have the 2 strikers, but then they definitely didn't defend in a 3-5-2. They would have had Ronaldo up front by himself, Cavani back tucking in, doing a lot of running. They would have had, you know, McTominay and Fred tucking in defensively. So this is almost a 5 at the back with the ball, or a 4 at the back, however way you want to look at it. It's formations these days are so fluid. They're just on paper, so that when you've got the ball, there's a generalized shape of having the right players in the right places.
I think a player like Wan-Bissaka, I think he'd actually be really suited to sort of playing as like a bit of like a hybrid centre back / fullback, and
well, they do call him
swinging rotation, right?
They do call him Spider-Man for a reason, Tommie.
Very good.
That's right.
All right, boys. Obviously, Manchester United, they scored 3 goals. Which was your pick of the goals?
Oh, it had to be Ronaldo for me, for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it was the goal that broke the deadlock. Hugely important goal, and I don't know who the commentator was. So Jesse, I always lean on you to tell me who the commentator of each game is. So if you know, you can jump in. But I think the commentator put it perfectly when he put it in the back of the net. It's like when Man United needed a big goal, you needed a big player, and it was going to be no one else from Ronaldo, that goal. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the match, I think. And what a hell of a strike it was. It really reminded me of obviously to a far lesser extent, but the Van Persie goal with Rooney hitting it over the top, just that same sort of technique where it's coming over your shoulder, just drops over the defender. And you really, how do you see that? And how do you execute that? But I guess that's why you pay Cristiano Ronaldo £500,000 a week.
You mentioned about the commentator. I think I can't remember who the second commentator was, but I think the one that you were talking about, Damo. But I think the commentator that I remembered from that game, or the piece of commentary I remember, was Andy Townsend, who's probably my favourite pundit / commentator at the moment. There was a pause, and he said, "What a finish!" You could tell like he really appreciated the technique from Ronaldo to pull that off with the power and the placement to be able to pull off what is an incredibly difficult skill.
He's such a sympathetic He's such a sympathetic commentator, isn't he? He's like, unlucky, good
Yeah.
work.
Just real encouraging.
He's like, nice idea. Like he always, he's basically the opposite of the rest of them, who are just absolutely ripping them a new one when they make a mistake, and he's thinking it from a footballer's perspective, isn't he? So
he is, and I like that because it is a little bit different. But yeah, all right. Look, Spurs though, pretty terrible performance from them. If I can borrow an Andy Townsend-ism again, he said that Spurs were insipid and lacking cutting edge, lacking bravery, and were the perfect opponent for a struggling Manchester United side. It's pretty scathing sort of observation, but. Boys, why hasn't Nuno been sacked yet? Damo, I know you were talking about this last night, so I'll give you a soapbox to stand on at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think it just comes down to Spurs, Daniel Levy, how frugal they are as a club and business-wise and spending. And the 2-year contract that Nuno signed has a clause that if at the end of the season he doesn't finish in the top 6, he can be, sacked from his job with no penalty payment. But if he gets sacked before that, then Spurs have to pay him out in total what he was owed for the remainder of his contract. So I think the reason he hasn't been sacked is because despite how poorly it feels like Spurs are doing, they're only 1 point off the top 6. So his goal as a manager this year was to finish in the top 6, and he is still well within that area. So he'll go all the way to the end of the season because Spurs will inevitably be within a game or two of the top 6 if they're not in it. So I feel that's why he's not going to be sacked. They're going to give him at least 1 season.
So I guess noting that then that he's not that far off what the expectations are. Do you think that Levy's actually levied himself?
A bit, yeah. And I thought so very much, because when you have a problem with a team, you don't wait till the end of the season to fix it. You try and fix it as soon as possible. So, and usually the first move is to sack the manager. Obviously it's probably smart in a way to do it this way, but it also he's kind of put himself in a corner and he can't really back out of it unless he pays Nuno out in full. And I'm pretty sure he's on a fairly big contract.
Levy just wakes up in the morning with 2 pieces of white bread and he's like, what are you? You're an idiot sandwich.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, gosh.
But look, yes, Spurs were pretty terrible. Didn't have a single shot on target against David De Gea. The Spurs fans seem to sort of turn on Nuno, I think, a little bit in this game. It could be a little bit of a turning point as far as that goes. They booed the team when the 3rd goal was conceded, which maybe that isn't that unusual for Spurs. They booed when Lucas Moura was substituted, and Kane just looks disinterested and, well, figuratively and literally, yeah, but it just looks like he doesn't want to be there.
It's almost, and that's 100% true, Tommie. Sorry, like I was just going to say, like, yes, he looks like he doesn't want to be there, so everyone can see that. But then there's the other side of things, which is like the other players aren't like. I actually thought it was all a little bit of like hype, and that there was actually nothing to it. But actually watching that game, players were not making the pass to him. Like he was running into space, and they were just like, no. They just pass it to Son, pass it to Moura, choose another pass it to square it across. How much of that is actually the manager's tactics and more just the players just not giving a shit about him? Because it actually looked like they weren't interested in prioritizing him. And if you think about how much in the last 5-6 plus years, it's always been think first, pass it to Harry. And I just thought it was visible that they weren't passing to him. I just thought it was weird.
It almost feels like one of those situations where it seems like he's trying too hard as well. That he's overdoing things, he's overthinking things. He might be making the run, but it's not really where it needs to be. He's doing these 1% of runs into the wrong areas where he doesn't usually go because he thinks that's what he needs to do. He's coming too deep. He's trying to take too many touches. He's trying to hit the perfect pass. Like Harry Kane, he's clearly physically and emotionally burnt out at the moment. You can tell. He's a brilliant player. There is a brilliant player in there, but it's how does he get that back? And I feel like he thinks the way to get that back is to work harder, because that's what it seems like he's doing. But he's not working the right way. He's doing the wrong things, and it really looks to me like he's just trying way too hard.
Yeah, it's I guess for Spurs to be successful this season, they have to get the most out of Harry Kane. So be interesting to see if things turn around there in the next few weeks or the next few months. Otherwise, yeah, there could be plenty more booing at the Spurs stadium. Manchester City hosted Crystal Palace last night, and what many would have seen as a pretty straightforward 3 points for City, but alas, it wasn't to be the case. City had one of those days where the longer the game went on, the worse things seemed to get. Just 5 minutes in, the City defence coughed up the ball, and Wilfried Zaha, he snuck in, put the ball past Edison, giving Palace an early lead. And then Palace were defending quite well, quite resolutely, as City continued to sort of bang on the door, but things really sort of then were taken a little bit further out of City's reach as Laporte was sent off for. I think everyone would agree it was a pretty rubbish foul. Maybe some plausible deniability there, but he did seem to. I think many would argue that it was a harsh red card, though. Boys, we were watching the Leicester Arsenal game, and it was very similar to Johnny Evans's yellow card on I think it was Aubameyang. Do you think Johnny Evans's should have been a red then, or should Laporte's have been a yellow? Or both will bang on?
It's difficult, right? Because obviously there is different discretions, different referees see the games different ways. It depends on the balance and the flow of the game, how a referee's decision gets made. But I think the crux of this was kind of what Jesse said earlier. The referee made the decision, and the VAR didn't have enough justification to overturn that. And it was exactly the same with Johnny Evans. The referee made the decision for a yellow card, but there wasn't enough justification to overturn it to a red card. So at the end of the day, you would say that VAR has done its purpose, and it's just the referees just saw the challenges differently. So it's kind of hard to say black or white. That's right, that's wrong, because that's just not how football works. That's not how the rules work.
Well, that's right. It's a reflection of the rule of anything, isn't it? It's the fact that the rule is open to interpretation, and this is what happens. Yeah,
fair enough. Boys, were either of you surprised that Pep seemed to keep a remarkably sort of level head throughout the first half, or you thought Pep seemed to be justifiably calm despite the red card and the fact that they were 1-0 down at home?
It was almost like that. He wasn't actually calm. He was just giving that Pep vibe where he just sits back and goes like, "Oh well, fuck all of you anyway." Like where he just doesn't involve himself because he's that pissed off that he doesn't do anything. I don't think he was calm. I think he was fuming, but he was so angry that he's like, "Well, I'm not even going to try."
The shot that I saw as Laporte was walking off towards the tunnel was this shot of Pep in the foreground and Laporte walking off in the background, and Pep doesn't even look towards Laporte, and obviously that can be done with just some clever camera work, or like you say, he was absolutely seething at the time. So I wish I could have seen that in full, but interesting.
I think that image is the definition of, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
Yeah. But you can't imagine Pep having that sort of an attitude, right?
No, you would assume that Pep would just be mad.
Yeah.
Pep's well, that could actually have massive ramifications for Laporte as a player, because he's been keeping Stones out of the team this season.
And all it takes, you've seen it with Pep before, that's all it takes is you make one mistake and you never get back in the team.
Exactly. So I think that it could be more than just a one-game ban for Laporte if Stones plays well.
Well, and I mean, to borrow an earlier pun that I used before, you would have thought that Stones would have been super effective against Crystal Palace, right? But
Stones glass houses. Yeah.
Yep. There was one thing I thought was interesting, mentioned about Pep sort of not seeming to be losing his shit over the fact that his team were 1-0 down. They were playing pretty well, but obviously there was plenty of issues there for his team. One thing I noticed was that Zaha seemed to, I guess, take all of Pep's sort of reserved anger, and Zaha was just had it all out on display in a very Wilf Zaha sort of manner during his clash with Bernardo Silva. Did you guys catch this?
Don't think
I'm
so.
not sure which
Okay.
incident though, mate. Which one are you referring
Well,
to?
and that's it. There were multiple incidences, but I mean, Palace were 1-0 up at this stage, and Zaha I think got fouled, and Bill whispered something into his ear, and then just off he went. And like we've seen Will Zaha just get sort of baited and goaded into reacting all the time. But normally it's when Palace are losing, and obviously all of the pressure is on Zaha to get them back into the game. But at this point, he scored the goal. They're up 1-0, and he still manages to get goaded and almost sort of. I think at one point he gets a yellow card, and he's sort of thinking, like, "Come on, mate! Like, it's frustrating. I'm not even a Palace fan, and I was frustrated at him." But
it's also what makes him such a good player, right? Is that he plays on that edge of emotion. That's what makes him such a good player. Is the same thing that makes him such a frustrating player.
And look, he very late on, before the eventual second goal, Zaha did get a disallowed goal as well. And I think it was because he was probably close to being about 2 meters offside, but his head was still very much in the game, though. So interesting, I guess, from that perspective. Not long after Zaha's disallowed goal, Gabby Jesus had a disallowed goal. And look, I've got to say, this was close to being my moment of the week because Gabby Jesus, he wheeled off. He thought he'd scored. No one even considered that it could have been offside. And it had shades of, like, remember that Champions League? I think it was the semi-final a couple of years ago.
Sterling.
Yeah, it was like that all over again. And I mean, everyone has lined up on halfway and everyone thinks it's a goal. And then for it to come back, oh, chef's kiss.
I think it also demonstrated, like, just how Foden's just in the zone now as a player, where it just takes one moment, turns the guy inside out, puts the ball on an absolute sixpence. Like, that was an outrageous chip cross. And yeah, I mean, obviously unlucky for City, but I was just going to say another thing I was going to mention before you were talking about City a lot, Tommie, but huge scalp for Vieira, which maybe we're about to head now. But I just thought, considering that he's already shown that he can mix it with the big boys so far, we've got to remember some of these good performances that Palace have had at City in recent years have been under Hodgson. So
playing very different football with a lot of different players too.
Exactly. So it's like a different manager comes in with actually quite a few different players, and they still beat them in their backyard.
Vieira's history with the City Football Group adds an extra element to that as well. He's obviously been a part of their coaching setup for a few years now, and a few different clubs involved with City. So to go to City and get a result like that, it's big props to Vieira for what he's been able to do.
Boys, before we move on to the next game, I did just want to give a shout out to the final goal because I thought this was a really good goal. The final goal where Palace finished off City in very City-esque fashion. The counter-attack looked like it had broken down when it went to Zaha, but they managed to rescue it. And even though Benteke was screaming for the ball for about 4 occasions from different players, they did manage to find the goal, with Conor Gallagher ended up putting the ball on the back of the net. Makes the table very, very interesting now, with Chelsea clear at the top by 3 points, with Liverpool dropping points as well, who we're about to now talk about as well. Absolute belter of a game. I thought this one between Liverpool and Brighton. Liverpool looked to have had the game wrapped up at 2-0, and there was a disallowed third goal for Liverpool all before half time, but Brighton did find a way back into the game through Enoch Mwepu, aka the computer. Just had to shoehorn that in because it's still the best nickname in the Premier League. But Brighton looked good for a point as they found an equaliser just after the hour mark from a goal worthy of a point against one of the best and most consistent teams in the Premier League of the last few years, as Brighton went from front to back against a very set Liverpool defence. It wasn't in transition from the Brighton goalkeeper Sanchez to Cucurella, Lallana, Trossard, and then just great finish from Trossard. And I think we've talked probably in the last 18 months or so about how Potter's team, they do play some good football, but finally this was good football with a good finish at the end, and it meant something because it was against a big team as well. So really big moment for Brighton, really big moment I think for Graham Potter as well. Jesse, question for you, mate. Liverpool look like they were motivated for a revenge against the team that they lost to last season at Anfield. Are Brighton Liverpool's bogey team now?
I suppose they are for now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any underestimating Brighton. I think Brighton have done enough, obviously in previous seasons, but particularly this season, for everyone to have their respect. But I think it was just 100% a combination of Brighton showing that they are a serious team this year, but also a mixture of that and Liverpool becoming a bit complacent. And I think that Klopp would argue a little bit about them not being complacent, but I think you just can't escape from the fact that they were completely in the driver's seat. One of your earlier comments in the group chat, Damo, was that they were just looking like they were in the zone basically, and they were. They could have had 3-4 goals. If Firmino actually put them away, there would have been 3 or 4 goals, and we may have looked at a different game that may have been beyond Brighton. But at the end of the day, if you've taken the second half into account, Brighton had the better chance to win the game. And it's incredible to think that actually a point at the end of the day was probably a better result for Liverpool than Brighton, which is a classic game of two halves. It really was. But I have to say, it's hard to escape when you're up 2-0 to look at it as a positive. Like, it is one of those really frustrating ones. But I think like a lot of people in the Liverpool supporter base and losing their shit and panicking and all this kind of thing, and I'm just like, this is the reality of the league now. You want teams like Brighton and Villa and all and West Ham, Tommie, to be there to upset the apple cart. Well, you can't want all those things and then have them not upset your apple cart now and again. And I think you saw from the City game, you saw from the Liverpool game, it's going to be a really, really interesting race. And just because Chelsea's 3 points clear, for me, that doesn't really mean anything at this stage. I mean, if they're 6, 9, 12 points clear, then we should be worried. But it's very early days.
Jesse, it's interesting that your reflection of the game, that it was almost a better point for Liverpool than it was for Brighton. I actually went to bed at halftime and thought Liverpool are probably going to win this by 4 or 5 goals like they have been. It could have, like you said, it could have been with the disallowed goal. There could have been another 1 or 2. It could have nearly been 4 or 5-0 at halftime. And I was like, all right, it's time for bed. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll see another cricket score. And when I saw the score, I was like, oh, I really didn't expect that. And then when I read and I watched the highlights and I read a lot of reviews about the game, it almost felt like Liverpool escaped with a point, which I couldn't believe after what I had seen for the 40 minutes of the game that I watched.
Which is what I mean. Like, you can't have a performance like that in the first half and then say that the second half was 100% just because Brighton were playing as well as Brighton can play. There's a combination between that and Liverpool really did drop the ball and got punished for it. So,
and I mean, they did do that against Manchester United last weekend, even though they won 5-0. The last probably 35 minutes after the 5th goal, they really looked poor in terms of. But it was very similar in the fact that they took their foot off the gas and they really had no motivation to kind of do anything.
Yeah, so you get your dues in that situation. I think that's what they deserved. So yeah.
Yeah, so look, depending on your perspective, it's either a point gained or 2 points dropped, but does leave Liverpool in second position, 3 points behind Chelsea, who will talk about how they went shortly. Leicester in the early game hosted Arsenal, and this one was, I think last week I said that Arsenal were kind of like winding back the clock, and they kind of did similar things here as well, winding back the clock with a very handy result, 2-0 win against Leicester at Leicester as well. Arsenal got off to a great start with 2 goals in the first 20 minutes, and that's the way it finished. Goals from Gabriel and Emil Smith-Rowe. We've kind of already alluded to the big 2 moments out of this game that I wanted to discuss, which was Ramsdale showing proving me wrong that he's actually a very good goalkeeper. Made 8 saves in this one, which that's quite significant. There was a couple that were just fantastic. There was one, I think, around the hour mark where he just before halftime, there was one where he saved it onto the bar. That was a really clutch save, and then it ended up getting cleared off the line by one of the defenders. And there was another one about the hour mark where it's just been slammed into his chin or his throat, which again was a really brave save as well. So Ramsdale are doing good things when I got to say I wasn't expecting him to do good things this year at Arsenal. So good stuff there. The other thing, which we've kind of already talked about, was the Johnny Evans moment where unlucky, or maybe lucky, not to get sent off for his foul on Aubameyang. So interesting times there. And I know some Arsenal fans were saying, "Oh, it's different rules for Arsenal," but I mean, obviously that's just the length that some people watch their team through.
Tommie, one of the things that really stood out to me in this game was how poor the midfield for Leicester were. If you actually watch the lead up to, I think it's the Smith Rowe goal, where they start from the back, it's just like, I think one of the midfield players, I've forgotten which one it was for Arsenal, but he had about 5 touches before he picked up the pass forward and chipped it over about 2 or 3 defenders. So not only did he have all the time in the world to pick the pass, he then picked the pass and cut out 2 or 3 players and just one lob pass. So it was like the
Paddy.
No, it was
Paddy
the other. It was
the pass, wasn't it?
Maybe it was. Who was the other guy that we basically hadn't heard of until last night? Sambi. Yeah. So it was basically, it was worrying from even just from watching it as a neutral. You're like, Leicester are going to get cut to ribbons if they leave it that open, and Arsenal didn't need to be that progressive after that because they'd got the 2 goals. But I guess what we were talking about last night is that Leicester have got away with a lot this season. They've got themselves out of really like situations they probably didn't deserve to get themselves out of, including in the Europa League. And this kind of felt like a little bit of that sort of righting itself and coming back to bite them a little bit, because you just can't give up that much space and expect to defend other teams not to take advantage. And Arsenal pounced on their opportunities.
They're really desperate for Ndidi to come back, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a big loss in their midfield. But I think the big thing from this game for me was it almost feels like there's been a line in the sand at Arsenal in the last couple of weeks where, as much as I've enjoyed seeing the decline of the way Arsenal have played football after, them having been in the Champions League for, was it 18 years straight, and then what's come after that and post Wenger is they almost feel like sometimes they can actually play good football but never get a result. And lately it feels like they haven't really been playing as good a football as they can, but they've still been getting results. And I think if you look at last night, we're talking about how poor Leicester's midfield were, but if you look at the on balance of the game, Leicester probably deserved something out of that game in terms of the pure amount of shots they had, nearly double the amount of shots on target, like double the amount of corners, double the amount of forward pressure. Like
XG.
Yeah, if you're looking at numbers and data, Leicester really looked like they dominated that game, but Arsenal ran away 2-0 winners. And that's sort of what's been the other way around for the last probably, couple of years of Arsenal, is that they look like they should be winning those games, but they're just not getting any points because of 1 or 2 errors that they make. And they've been on the other end of that lately. So, something at Arsenal has changed. It's going to be interesting to, in retrospect, watch the Amazon documentary that's being filmed of them this season to kind of see what and where was that moment that have sort of, it's a kind of light switches flicked on at Arsenal. And I think another thing to take away from that game is I think I read that 8 of their 11 are eligible for the Premier League under 23 rules, and that's got to be through homegrown, that's got to be through age. So if you look at Arsenal starting 11 and they've got essentially 8 of their squad are homegrown or young enough to play in the Youth Premier League. So that's another good sign for them if you're an Arsenal fan.
Lots of parallels between Arsenal and Manchester United in sort of their post-Wenger and Fergie timelines. But at this point, you'd have to say that I think Arsenal are doing their rebuild more thoroughly and probably more completely, I think, at this point, because they've kind of gone in completely different directions. And I think here we're seeing, I think expectations are lower at Arsenal, but that I think is helping Arteta, I guess, bring in some younger players and I guess sort of slowly build towards something as opposed to Manchester United where they've just thrown money at, I guess, some famous players. And
yeah, well, I think it's similarly to what Jesse alluded to before about having this sort of interim manager. Arteta, I don't think was ever looked at as the marquee man to lead the team. He was kind of the interim man to get us through this rebuild process where the fans are going to have a little bit more love and a little bit more sway with you, and they're not going to be as harsh on you because of who you are. It's almost like that's what Xavi's role is going to be at Barcelona. And as soon as Arsenal are past that kind of that rebuild and they're back sort of at a better level, Arteta's inevitably going to have to step aside and a big manager will come in. And whatever the reasoning of getting rid of him, he's done his role of being this sort of interim manager that just takes the punches and takes the pressure off everyone in the team.
Speaking of taking the pressure off, no European football cannot be cannot be ignored here because they are literally just preparing. I mean, apart from the old FA Cup or League Cup, they are literally just preparing for Premier League every week, and that helps when you've got a young squad.
Huge difference. All right, sorry, boys. We're going to have to keep moving, though. Newcastle, they hosted Chelsea. Although Chelsea didn't break the deadlock until the 65th minute. It was a pretty routine victory for Chelsea. A double for Reece James saw Newcastle Stadium renamed Reece James's Park. And Jorginho, he completed the route from the penalty spot. Newcastle remained managerless, though, after Steve Bruce left the club a week ago. Jose Fonseca, he appears to be the number one candidate at this point for the manager job. But as I was saying before, Ten Hag, he seems to be also within a shout. But curiously, in addition to what I was saying, Ten Hag and Overmars, or Mark Overmarks, as I've written erroneously in my notes, those two are being mooted as a bit of a package deal, manager and sporting director, head of scouting, that kind of thing, which would be really interesting because obviously before we said that the new owners are going to throw a metric shit ton of money at the club, and some of that's going to be in the academy, some of it's going to be on new players, and they're going to need someone very responsible to handle all of that money in terms of selecting targets and the like. So
two for one package sounds like something you get from Sports Direct.
Too soon, mate.
How ironic.
Can't mention it. Don't mention the war.
Did you see Tommie that apparently Reece James asked Jorginho if he could take the penalty, and Jorginho just said no. He was on a hat trick, and he just said, "Nah, mate. Sorry, mate. That's not how it works."
Yeah, and I'm disappointed it wasn't a jumpy boy penalty. It was just a normal one.
Yeah, there was some stat though. I'm not sure what it was, but apparently, like, what for Reece James to get that penalty, it would be like within the club, it would have been like a record for maybe it was a wing back thing. I don't know what it was, but there was some record on the line, and Jorginho's like, "Nah, sorry, mate. No thanks."
I think if we go back to talking about kind of how the game played out, from watching the highlights up until the 65th minute, I feel like the Chelsea fans would have been getting really, really nervous at that point because I don't think I've seen a more dominant performance that was still 0-0 in a long time. Like Chelsea were just absolutely battering Newcastle, but just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. But when they finally did, it almost felt like Newcastle went, "Oh, well, you know, we're going to lose now anyway." And Chelsea kind of just ran away with it in the end. But yeah, I think the longer that stayed 0-0, the more squeaky bum time there was for Chelsea fans.
Yeah, it's they're always tricky games, I guess. Sometimes when you're playing against a team that maybe feels as though they don't have anything to lose, as Newcastle might have in this instance. Although it's sort of hard to know sort of what the attitude or what the view is within the club at the moment. I mean, I don't know who, like you, Damo, I only caught the highlights of this one, but I don't know like who's running the match day sort of situation for Newcastle even at this point. It seems suboptimal, the fact that they haven't appointed a manager yet. A couple of things that I wanted to point out from this match. The first one, my favorite bit of commentary from this one, Newcastle looking for an early breakthrough. Fraser looks to make it happen, but doesn't make it happen. That was I thought some great commentary. And the other thing I wanted to point out was that mentioned that Reece James has already he scored 2 goals in this game. Chelsea have had 15 different goal scorers this season already in the Premier League, and their top 2 goal scorers are both fullbacks. That's Chile B and Reece James with 4 and 3 respectively. And then you've also got Thiago Silva, Antonio Rudiger, Trevor Chalobah, and Marcos Alonso, who have also chipped in with goals. So just like real Chelsea areas over the last sort of maybe 18 months, 2 years, there with all of the goal scorers, and just further evidence that the number 9 jersey is still cursed there.
So they've if Chelsea have got 15 different goal scorers, they've had I'm pretty sure there's only 3 teams in the league, or maybe 4 teams in the league, that have scored more than 15 goals in total so far. So it's pretty incredible to see that kind of spread across your team. And I think as a Chelsea fan, you'd be so happy at that, because you're not reliant on a goal scorer. And you can see when you're ever reliant on a goal scorer like Spurs are with Harry Kane, and those goals dry up, then you're in big trouble.
Tuchel must love a smorgasbord. Loves a good spread.
Yeah. So where are we? 15 goals. Yeah, you're right. I think there's 4, 6, 7 teams I think that have scored. Pretty much,
the top 5 are the only teams that have scored more than 15, and then maybe Everton as well.
Well, even Arsenal and Brighton have scored 11, 12. So, yeah, it really is. There's not many teams that have actually scored 15 goals. So, it is pretty incredible. Let's keep moving, though. Burnley, they hosted Brentford. Burnley were the only home side this weekend to take all 3 points, as every home team either lost or drew, which I thought was a bit of an interesting stat for everyone. Chris Wood worldie set the tone, as Burnley scored 3 times in the first half before Brentford finally got a late consolation. Another stunner, this time from Saman Godos. A bit of mayo there for everyone. Brentford did have one chance that was cleared off the line by Tarkovsky, and Pope did make a couple of great saves. So maybe a little bit unlucky, but I think by this point everyone knows how Burnley play, so shouldn't be any surprises there that Brentford did have plenty of chances.
3 losses in a row now for Brentford, though. Obviously started so brightly, found themselves at the pointy end of the league after, was it 6 or 7 games? And now they've lost 3 in a row, and they've conceded more goals in those last 3 games in their first 7 games combined. So it's something at Brentford doesn't feel quite right, or doesn't feel like it was this time last month even. So yeah, you go through those ups and downs over a Premier League season. But Brentford need to kind of snap out of that one quickly, because as soon as you start losing in the league, it's easy to keep losing.
It's really awkward with the fixtures too, because they played against Chelsea, they played against a couple of teams that they probably weren't expected to beat, and they did pretty damn well against them, and only just lost, right? So like even the defeat seemed incredible, but then they also going to go into a really quick transition to what should be easier fixtures for them, or winnable fixtures, and the big question mark was, having played this way up until now, and having players like Tommie, who usually are very progressive, dropping back so deep to receive the ball and play a slightly different role against better teams, what were they going to do as soon as they start playing at Burnley or Norwich, and actually teams they need to get 3 points? Is Tommie all of a sudden going to go another 10, 15 minutes up the pitch and be way more progressive? Does that leave them more exposed at the back? Are they going to concede more goals? There was all these questions coming into the Burnley game, and what happens is that they concede 3 goals. So it'll be it'd be really interesting to see how they line up next week and how they prepare, because Thomas Frank, basically whatever his plan was, he got outdiced, and now he's going to have to sort of go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, maybe we overcompensated too much in the other direction.
Boys, we talked about Brentford's real drop off in form. Are they the new Norwich from 2 seasons ago?
That's harsh. I don't think that.
That's appalling.
Yeah, that is one of the worst insults you can give any football team, I think.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Boys, but ironically, Brentford actually play Norwich next weekend, so I think that's actually going to be a very interesting game for some of the reasons you guys just talked about, to see how they play, and also Norwich will be looking at that game going, they'll be absolutely licking their fingers, like they've been eating CCs, just with a view to that Brentford are there for the taking, so should be a cracker.
Norwich got to find a way to score goals. I think they've only got 2 all season.
Yeah. All right. Finally, Watford, they hosted Southampton. Southampton got the breakthrough through Shea Adams with a really lovely goal from just outside the area. No backlift, just picked his spot, and a goal very worthy of 3 points. Some observations from me noted that Southampton wore red shorts. Just hated it. I thought it looked terrible. I don't know why they didn't wear black shorts. Just anyway, I know why they didn't wear black shorts, but still it frustrates me. And I also wanted to give a shout out to McCarthy, the Southampton goalkeeper, for that massive save really late on in the game. They talk about sometimes that a goalkeeper sometimes will make a save that's just as good as scoring a goal, and that was one of them.
What about Adam Armstrong, who looks like Danny Ings off Wish?
I'll pay that.
Yeah, he's they're not quite getting what they need out of him, and I think if it's Broha or Brocha, if he wasn't injured, I think he would have started this game. So Armstrong was out there to sort of prove a point, and again, just didn't quite convert. All right,
boys, still 3 matches to be played. We'll whip through some previews and score predictions very rapidly. First up, Norwich play Leeds. Norwich still winless. They play host Leeds. Both teams in the relegation zone. Real sense that Norwich really need the 3 points here, not just to get off the mark, but also against a relegation rival. Leeds are still missing Patrick Bamford, but Rodrigo's filled the breach admirably lately. Boys, who are you taking here for the win? Norwich or Leeds?
I'm going to say Leeds, but I think I was talking about Norwich need to find a way to score goals. If they're going to score against anyone, it's going to be Leeds, who arguably look like the worst defense in the league at the moment. So if they can't score against Leeds, then who are they going to score against? So you said they're looking at Brentford as a game that's a chance to get their first win. I think they'll be all out to get a win tonight.
See, I think it's interesting because everyone is expecting Leeds to beat Norwich because of reputation. But as you pointed out, there's that kind of like underlying issue with Leeds with the players missing and also the defensive frailties. However, I actually think coming full circle, Norwich will be so desperate to score a goal that they might even play Leeds into form. So Leeds will probably still concede a goal, but it could blow out. It could be like a 3-1 to Leeds just because Norwich will be so desperate to win the game.
Just to score a goal.
Just to score a goal, yeah.
All right, Claret and Blue derby between Aston Villa hosting my West Ham. Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky is rumored to be buying a minority stake in West Ham this week, so plenty of foot there. Possibly one of the Dildo brothers or both the Dildo brothers selling part of their stake. Does appear as though unlikely that he's going to buy a majority stake because I think the two Davids, they have to pay a penalty on the stadium deal if they sell before, I think it's another 18 months time. So a little bit early for that yet. But Villa have lost their last 3 games in the Premier League. And you've got to go back to at least January last year for Villa's most recent Claret and Blue derby win. That was against Burnley. But then you've got to go all the way back to May 2015 for the last time Villa beat West Ham. So, boys, you got a prediction here?
West Ham, I think, will win. And I think important to note, if West Ham do win, they go level on points with Manchester City in 3rd place. So,
boys,
a lot to play for both teams, but I just think West Ham will be too good.
Yeah, I think it should be a cracker, mate. I think I'm going to go 3-2 West Ham.
Ooh. I think everyone can join me in agreement here that they just want the Claret and Blue to win.
Well, I think Martinez was meant to be out, but he's back though, isn't he? Because he went back to Argentina during the week. for a family emergency, and then he came back for the game. So for a while there, I thought you might have Antonio up against who the reserve goalkeeper is there. Steele or something, I think it is. Oh, no, it's the Brighton guy, isn't it? Steer. That's what I'm thinking of.
I've heard they call him Superman, the Man of Steel.
Man of Steel.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, and finally, Wolves, they host Everton. Wolves have found some good form of late with 3 wins and a draw since September, whilst Everton have done the opposite. They've hit the skids and haven't won since beating Norwich in September. Everton also remain in the midst of an injury crisis with Decore, Calvert-Lewin and Cenk Tosun, everyone's favourite forgotten player, are all unavailable. However, last week we did see that the return of Richarlison is a massive boost for Everton. Boys, you see anything other than a Wolves victory?
Draw. I think it's going to be a draw. I think it'll be a boring match.
I think it's going to be 0-0. Yeah,
that's my first reaction to it when I see this, which that inevitably means that it's going to be 4-4 or 6-2 or you just never know.
Because I think Wolves will try a lot, but I think that Everton will be so scarred from last week that they will just be out there to annoy them and nullify them. So.
Draw isn't a terrible result for either team at this point. They'd probably just be happy with continuing to clock up points, I guess. But look, that wraps things up pretty much for this week. Don't forget to tune in next week for we'll have another More Than a Game FPL prize announcement. So please tune in for that. And don't forget our A-League season preview app will be dropping on the 14th of November. So mark that in your calendars. But until next time, enjoy the football.